All right, welcome to Comics and Chronic. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Iannaccio, and joining me as always are Jake F.H. and Cody Walaka-Cannon. I'm really excited to talk to our next guest because honestly, he's one of my favorite writers in comics today. He's written Exit Stage Left, The Snagglepuss Chronicles, The Flintstones, Not All Robots, Superman Space Age. He's got Fantastic Four Life Story. He's done Prez, Wonder Twins, There's My Bad, Second Coming, Traveling to Mars, Billionaire Island. I tried to read all your books in preparation. Like I've read some of them in the past and I'm like, let me read all of them. And I just couldn't. You have so much. That's not a bad thing. There's just like, I still have more Mark Russell to read after this episode. And that's who we're talking to, Mark Russell, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!
Thank you.
Do we do podcasts regularly, Mark?
Yeah, pretty regularly. I'd usually do about one a week.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Very
Nice.
I'm not, a shrinking violet by any means.
No, that's awesome. I feel like, especially nowadays, like any way you could get like the word out about any of your books, like why not?
Yeah, and it also, just talking to other people about it makes me think about it. It's like I get ideas for stories or I think about like things I should have done differently now that it's too late. Just talking to people about it.
Nice.
I view it as part of my creative process.
And
Nice.
you're in Los Angeles, correct?
No, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Although weird you should say that because I'm actually wearing my Los Angeles Chargers t-shirt. So abide by the illusion that I'm in. I'm in Los Angeles.
Are you a fan of the Chargers?
They're like a secondary team for me. I mostly root for them because Justin Herbert is I'm a big Ducks fan. I went to the U of O.
Nice. So have you always been based out of Oregon?
Yeah, no, I grew up in Eugene and then I moved up to Portland and that's about as far as I made it.
I know Eugene. I have a buddy that lives in Eugene.
Oh yeah?
I've never been. I've never visited.
Does he go to work at the university or something?
No, he's like a fisherman actually. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Interesting.
That's perfectly valid reason to be in Eugene as well.
He has like a I don't know. I was going to say a ship, not a ship, but he has like a boat and does some commercial fishing.
Yeah.
So.
So is Eugene like a college town?
Yeah. It's the University of Oregon is there, and it's also on the nexus of the Willamette and the Mackenzie rivers. There's a lot of like people in boats and fishing and water recreation, whitewater kayaking and stuff.
That sounds like my kind of place.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
I'm based out of Morgantown, West Virginia, so very similar. West WVU is there. There's a lot of whitewater and kayaking that goes on in the area.
Yeah, it sounds like the maybe the Appalachian version of Eugene.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm in the Bronx. I don't have nature really. I mean, I'm in Queens. Why I'm saying in the Bronx? Wow.
It's because you're from the Bronx.
Yeah, it's in my soul still.
Also, we smoke here on this podcast, just to give you a heads up in case you see us smoking. So, yeah.
That's fine with me. I don't care. That's
Jake
fine.
isn't burning.
My smoking is this energy drink.
Nice.
Nice. So, do you smoke at all? No.
I don't.
Nice.
No, I never have. I tried. I think I'm not a smoker today because I first tried to smoke when I was 10 years
Oh,
old.
shit.
Oh man. And I just found it just like I was like vomiting afterwards. And, it was like, why do people do this?
That's funny. Yeah, that sounds awful. I wish that's how it would have played out for my brother. He smokes cigarettes and bud to this day because he started at such a young age.
Yeah, the aversion therapy really worked on me. No one made me do it. It was just my own, dumb choice, but it worked.
So I want to start this off because I found this out yesterday, and when I heard it, I'm just thinking like now anything's possible because like this blew my mind. So Were you writing Count Chocula fan fiction on Facebook, and that's how like DC picked you up?
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, that's the story. Because I'd written books and stuff, so I just imagined, they fell in love with my literary canon, but no, it was just the Count Chocula Facebook fan fiction I'd be putting on Facebook. That Marie Javins, my editor at DC, who was my editor for like a long time when I started working there, like she just happened to read that, thought this guy should be writing a comic book, and that's when they approached me to write Prez, which was my first, not only my first comic with DC, my first comic book ever.
Whoa,
nice.
Count Chocula fan fiction. What got you into? Yeah. Why Count Chocula specifically?
It was just sort of like that kind of funny that like I was reimagining the sort of cereal monsters as like living in some sort of Game of Thrones universe, trail and violence. The weird thing is now that the Count Chocula thing is actually becoming a comic.
Oh,
yeah, we're doing it through Ahoy.
Nice.
They're publishing a book of my serial monster fiction, and I think it's just going to be called Serial Monsters.
Nice. Oh, that's so cool.
That's awesome.
But that's coming out later in 2023.
Oh, very cool.
So is it like just reprinted your same post, or like you updated it?
No, it's turned into a full blown like comic book, like a graphic novel.
Wow.
So about 100 pages long, tells the story of, for intellectual property reasons, I can't call him Count Chocula, so he's the Marquis de Coco.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Like my little Frankenberry analog is like Frankencherry. Yeah. And there's a lot of different cereal, like pretty much everyone I can think of. There's Tony the Tiger is in there.
Nice.
Captain Crunch. Do you have Captain Crunch?
Yeah.
Like Lieutenant Crunch or something instead of Captain?
I think he's Captain Crackle in my version. And
nice.
He's like the biggest dick in the entire series.
As he should be.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. That how serious is this take it gonna be? Because you were talking about Game of Thrones politics.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's very dark.
Nice.
It's some dark chocolate.
Yeah, I feel like that's awesome.
The first chapter, actually, the first chapter I released in like an Ahoy Edgar Allan Poe comic, it was actually called Dark Chocolate. So it was sort of like, I thought
very cool.
Nice. I like that. I mean, that seems to be like in preparation for this interview, I read the Snagglepuss, and I liked that it was like a twist where Snagglepuss is like a playwright who's also a communist and a closeted queer, and he has to like that was very interesting, kind of like dark noir take on the character Snagglepuss.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he was ever overtly a communist, but he certainly was a queer playwright living in New York, which, for all intents and purposes, makes him a communist.
What is I guess I feel like are cartoons and like that nature a big role in your life or childhood? Because you do Snagglepuss and Flintstones, the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and then these serial analogs. Are you like a huge fan of just cartoons in general?
Yeah, well, the cartoons and comic strips are actually a much bigger influence on me than comics were, because that was what I read as a kid. That was where my awareness of pop culture came in, was from like the panel gag cartoons. Like I would buy just books upon books of like Peanuts cartoons or Heathcliff cartoons. Anything, Wizard of Id, anything I could just sort of consume from, one page to the next, or just open the middle and find something funny or worthwhile. That was kind of like the influence of my writing, that anybody should be able to open up to any page, anything you've written. And even if they're not going to understand what happened before or what happened after, get something out of that page that's going to make them want to read on. Mad Magazine was probably my biggest influence.
Nice.
Very cool. I grew up my first foray into comic books was Garfield comic strips.
Yeah, same. I
was big into Garfield.
I loved, even though the dudes fall from grace, I loved Dilbert as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I remember enjoying Dilbert. I don't enjoy Scott Adams, but but yeah, I think that the secret to the cartoon strips is just sort of like marinating you in a world. So it doesn't have to be like a laugh out loud funny joke every strip. It's just sort of like enjoy the universe of like Garfield being a cat who enjoys lasagna and can't stand his owner, or at least just barely tolerates John. It's just sort of being dropped in that sort of universe for like a few seconds every day that people enjoy, not necessarily the jokes, which were hit and miss.
Nice. I feel like in your writing though, like I read a lot of comics, like you can make things really funny. Like I feel like a lot of comic writers try to be funny and it doesn't always land, but now that you're explaining like your influences with those kind of comics, it makes so much sense the way everything's even paneled. Like obviously you're not the artist, but the way the jokes hit it just make the flow of it always works. I'm thinking of the Flintstones. I'm thinking of Snagglepuss. Like what you just said about opening a page and maybe, I don't know the story that's going on, but something about that page. And I feel like with your writing, it's either a joke or some line where I'm like, ooh, I gotta think about what Mark Russell just said right there. I gotta think about my whole life right now, So I really like your writing is what I like aim to be like.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's harder to write funny than it is to write like dark or spooky, which is I think why there's way more comics that skew towards dark and spooky than there are funny comics. That, and I think that the people who want humor like have sort of given up on comics and they've sort of moved on to other medium, which is a shame. Yeah. But I think that in a lot of ways, one of the things that is sort of like haunted comics for like the last 20 to 30 years is that it's become more genre intensive, where people now go there to read specific types of genres as opposed to like just going there to see what's available. And I think if I have anything like a mission or anything like sort of a legacy in comics, I think it will be trying to push back against that a little bit and saying, no, comics are a medium, not a genre. And there's a lot of different flavors. And here's one, it should be more like a Baskin Robbins, not like, a Starbucks.
Nice.
Great, I like that.
Yeah, and you can see that also in your Hanna-Barbera runs, how like Flintstones, I thought it was just going to be like a silly fun time, but it's very serious. And like in the first issue when Fred was trying to get those people to, it felt, I like the like anti-capitalist undertones and like Fred trying to get the Cro-Magnons, that's it. To, do it. And they're like, why did we do this? And he's like, I don't know, so we could spend money on something somebody else hated making. And
it's like Civilization only kind of makes sense to the people inside Civilization.
Yeah.
If you were coming to it from the outside, you're like, what? I have to like do this same thing for like 10 hours a day. I have, go back to this one place that I go to every day. It would seem very weird, I think, for somebody who was a hunter-gatherer who was used to just being able to wander, all day or walk, 20 miles a day, like following the caribou herds. The idea of like just doing one task all the time so you could stay in one place would feel a little odd, if not, sort of deflating.
Yeah.
It's like you went from this rich experience of like having to interact with your environment and solve like 100 different problems, depending upon whether or not you were hunting or gathering or, facing off with another tribe, to just doing, figuring out how to like smash rock into tinier pieces of rock. It isn't much of a challenge, but I think in a lot of ways, that's why Civilization came to be, because people on some level wanted the boring. They wanted life to be easier and more predictable and less challenging. So they gradually built themselves a little cage and stepped inside and closed the door.
Nice. But yeah, that's exactly how I'm talking about. The way you infuse like social commentary with a comic that I didn't expect to be social commentary heavy. It's like I wasn't going into Flintstones being like, I thought it was just going to be like, more.
Why would you?
Yeah.
No, there's no intellectual property I can't ruin. My whole theory is that, like, well, you know, I mean, I was never a huge Flintstones fan, and even if I was, the worst thing in the world you could possibly make is sort of a tasteful homage to the thing you like. So when I got the gig writing the Flintstones, my whole sort of philosophy was like, well, I'm going to use this as like a launch pad to write about the things I really want to write about, and just like within the context of the Flintstones being this sort of like blue collar family in like the world's first civilization.
Do you get a lot of clapback for your portrayal on these classic characters? Like, do people ever show any hate or like distaste for, because you are taking like properties that have been around since the 60s, 70s, and
yeah, you get some of this, you ruin my childhood stuff, but you know, I always figure those are people who are never going to really enjoy my work anyway, and so there's no point in writing to make them happy.
For sure.
Sort of professionally unhappy. So I, you know, my theory is I just write for the people who like my stuff.
Nice.
So I don't even worry about like somebody, you know, criticizing it because you're ruining classic characters, or it's not, you know, doesn't hew close enough to the old characters, or you're ruining their childhood. It's fair that they feel that way. They're welcome to their opinions, and, you know, everyone's taste is their own. There's really no debating that. No, you didn't feel that way. But those just aren't the people I write for.
I would never have picked up the Flintstones if I didn't see, oh, Mark Russell writes this. Like,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, at the time, you know, when I was writing it, nobody knew who I was, or, you know, knew what sort of flavor I was. So I think that a lot of the blowback I got from the, you know, initial Flintstones, like the first few issues, was like people were expecting one flavor and they got a very, very different one. Like they're expecting to like eat a piece of chocolate and it turns out to be barbecue sauce. Even if you love barbecue sauce, you might initially, you know, freak out. Like, what did I just put in my mouth? I think there was some of that, but then the people who liked my barbecue sauce kept coming back.
Hell yeah.
I was going to ask, are you reading any comics like now?
Yeah, you know, I am. I'm always reading comics. And more importantly, I think I'm always reading non-comics, because I feel like for comics to remain vibrant, you have to bring in outside world things outside of comics into comics. And I'm really enjoying Junkyard Joe, Jeff Johns' comic about this robot GI who fought in Vietnam and then was sort of, you know, self-destructed because you realize it wasn't compatible with this ethical programming, and then reemerges later. I don't want to give too much away, but it's really good. And to me, the thing I find sort of interesting about it is that it feels to me very much like a rejected what's his name, GI Robot comic pitch. And I've written a GI Robot in my series One Star Squadron, so I think I was a little intrigued by that. And I'm also always a little intrigued when I read something where I feel like this was a pitch that DC or Marvel responded to by saying not in a million years. And it very much has that feel to me. So I'm enjoying that. And also Tom King's Love Everlasting. I've just started reading that. Nice. It's good. So yeah.
Do you read Eric Powell by any means? By any way? Like
I don't know who that is.
He writes The Goon. I feel like because of you're a funny writer, you might actually like his writing too.
No, it sounds like maybe someone I should check out. But The Goon
by Eric Powell. That's really cool.
I'll check it out.
Nice.
Yeah, Jake's always spreading the gospel of the Goon.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's how you know if it's hitting somebody hard enough for them to talk about it, you know, apropos of nothing, or just to bring it up in random conversation, then that's a good sign. That's a sign that this is a comic that, whether you like it or not, will probably stick with you after you've read it.
Yeah. So last year we read your comic, Second Coming.
Yeah.
I was raised in a really religious household, and I'm assuming because of the way you wrote that story that you were too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was raised in a very sort of fundamentalist evangelical household, which is largely, I think, what Second Coming is a reaction against.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like that story.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's we're planning on doing a lot more. Like there's a third series that's coming out next month.
Oh, cool.
And then I'm already writing a fourth one. So
Nice.
hopefully a lot more Second Coming.
That's so cool to hear.
That's super impressive.
So I remember when that came out, I know there was some controversy because I don't know why, but it's an awesome comic. Like, I mean, I know why, but like everyone should read it. You're not going to be like, oh, I can't believe Mark Russell wrote this. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't come off as a like it's not a blasphemous read by any mean. It's
not. I think this is the thing people needed to understand is that like it's not like an assassination attempt on Christ. That Christ is actually the good guy in the story.
Yeah,
but you know what it is. Ironically, that I think the reason why it got so much blowback before anyone had even read a page of it was just that because there's a lot of Christians, particularly in the evangelical fundamentalist community, who feel like Jesus is their intellectual property. Like they've got the trademark on him. And so anybody else, you know, writing about him or telling his story is like sort of like copyright infringement.
That's hilarious.
It's true. I think that so they just reacted with not even knowing what the story was about to the idea that somebody would deign talk about Christ outside of their, you know, their limited perspective on him. And I think the irony is that this is largely what the comic is about. It's about how this sort of like attempt to like turn Christ into intellectual property is like so misguided, and about how far afield, you know, the institutions of Christianity are from the actual teachings of Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely got that from reading it.
You know, I was going to say, you know, you wouldn't expect such serious tones from a Flintstones book. I was thinking about like the movie is so goofy, and yet there's like 3 things that are pretty serious. Like he helps him with adoption. He helps Barney adopting a child. Like that's pretty comic booky or not, like goofy or not. Like that's like a real issue. I'm adopted, so I appreciated the I didn't realize that. There's so much I saw like about this movie after rewatching it.
Yeah.
That I never saw as a kid.
Yeah, there are a lot of like really sort of deep undertones to the Flintstones. I mean, I know it's just basically sort of like the honeymooners set in the Stone Age, but there's a lot of these implications, which I think in a lot of ways mirrors America in the 60s, where we had this facade of this sort of happy picket fence, you know, suburban life. But it was all kind of built on a lot of tragedy that had just happened in the country's immediate past. And that's, you know, I think also true of the Flintstones, where, you know, it's like you have this story of adoption. Like this kid came out of nowhere because, you know, whoever his family wasn't around to support him, wasn't around to raise him. And also the animals that are just kind of like used as appliances. To me, I found that kind of horrifying. Like, oh, there's just a pig that lives under the sink at all times, never leaves the area under the sink.
That's abusive.
Or the worst was like the little bird that lives inside the camera. So it's like trapped inside this tiny camera all the time until they need a picture. And then they snap a picture and it comes out and it chisels a little image. And it just goes right back in the camera. So its life is that, you know, like 5 seconds every, you know, week.
I never thought I would ever care about an armadillo bowling ball until I read your Flintstones comic.
Well, in a lot of ways, it's, you know, the metaphor about how we're all kind of like seen as just sort of like household appliances. We're all kind of seen as just sort of this like a vacuum cleaner that's owned by the company we work for or whatever.
Yeah.
That this is sort of the central crime of civilization, that it just views us and it allows people to view each other just as their economic functions, not as like human beings. And in order to make civilization work for people, that's what needs to be, that's what we need to rebel against. The idea that people only matter as a barista or matter as, you know, a insurance salesman or whatever, that what matters is these are people trying to live, you know, decent lives. And then the working as the barista or the insurance salesman or the bowling ball is secondary to that. That should all be like to feed the full and meaningful life that you should be living as a sentient being.
And I see that across, I mean, you can see that in Snagglepuss, the Flintstones, not all robots, one star squad. Like, you feel that in all the stories. And I like that it's a recurring theme. Like, it feels all connected in some way.
Yeah, I feel like to the extent that I'm political, it's very boring and obvious politics. I don't feel like I'm very radical at all. I feel like my feeling is that, well, you know, the human beings are what's important. The human institutions should change to better take care of the human beings, not the other way around.
Mm.
That's kind of something total. I don't know. I don't feel like that's, controversial or, but there are people who take great issue with that.
It's true. It's definitely true.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Jake.
Huh?
No, like Jake.
So did you when preparing for the podcast, did you rewatch the newest or the 94 Simpsons? Or like, had you seen it?
Flintstones.
I don't know. Flintstones. Sorry.
I didn't rewatch it specifically for the podcast, but I did watch it like about a year ago.
Nice.
So I've seen it somewhat.
Nice. This was my first time watching it since childhood.
Same.
I think so. The same.
Yeah, and God, so much that I missed. I mean, like you talked about how the appliances were just like living creatures. How just like very much like what bled into your. Or did you? I guess I should ask. Did you watch this while you were writing the comic?
You know what? I tried to. I tried to watch it like when I was originally writing the comic, and I tried watching some of the old cartoons, and I just decided at some point that this was not helping. That what I wanted to do was so far afield from that any influence I took on from the movie or from the TV shows was going to be counterproductive.
Nice.
So I really just wanted to write it, make it my own thing. And then my research was just kind of finding out like online, like things like what was Wilma's story? Who were her parents? Or, what was the story surrounding, Kazoo, and just so I like had like a little bit of basis of understanding where these characters came from. But I definitely did not want to be influenced by the tonality or the pacing or anything of the movie or the cartoons.
Nice. Yeah. The movie, it was crazy. Just so many little things. Like it was definitely the first time I saw Halle Berry.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was the first time she was in, like, I think it was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it was breakthrough because it's not like everyone was talking about her after that movie, but yeah, I think it's the first time you can say that was where I saw her.
That was the first time I saw her too.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize the villain was also the guy from Twin Peaks and stuff.
Yes. Kyle MacLachlan.
That guy's in a ton of movies, and and it's like I never realized it until after watching Twin Peaks, and then now I go back and see these things like, wow, he's in that.
Yeah. I love the cast for this movie. Like like everyone in this movie, I think I would say it's perfectly casted. I mean, Rick Moranis as Barney.
Yes, Rick Moranis is back.
Yeah, Rick Moranis was awesome. Also, honestly, you take away the glasses and dye his hair blonde, and Rick Moranis is a little hottie. Dude, he looked great in that movie. I was like, wow, what a stud.
Yeah.
That's funny.
No, yeah, they really put, I think, a lot more effort into the character development and the casting and everything in the first movie than they did in the second.
I remember the second.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah.
I don't even remember this. I remember not liking it. I remember the second one just like not hitting the same notes.
It didn't.
The second one was pretty unwatchable.
Nice.
It's almost like The Mask 2 with Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah, it's like, why did they make it? Hey, but now I'm thinking like, all right, could there be a Flintstones Viva Rock Vegas, but the Mark Russell edition? Is that a possibility?
Good. Yeah, you could definitely do I think a Flintstones movie based upon my comic. I don't know if anyone would come see it.
That'd be cool.
Flintstones 3, sad Flintstones.
Yeah. It could be like Casino, but with the Flintstones.
Ooh.
Open the door with his head.
How would the car explode? They're like rubbing their feet on the floor
like
really
two people
fast.
trying to start a fire. You do a lot. Scorsese's Flintstones movie.
Well, it is kind of wild that yesterday they announced Bedrock, which is this adult animated sequel. I was like, oh shit, we're talking about the Flintstones tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, it's very timely. Yeah, people ask me like online and social media and stuff. It's like, oh, is this going to have anything to do with your comic? And the answer is no. I mean, the premise is completely different, and yeah, they haven't talked to me at all. But I mean, it looks interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a weird take. I'm gonna hold for one, like Fox cartoons are usually start as hits and then kind of dwindle as time. Like most
that's
of
that's like most animated shows.
Yeah.
They just start to like get a lot of buzz really early, and then everyone just dissipates like halfway into the first season. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be the pattern with animation.
So I was gonna say, have you watched Velma, the new?
No, I haven't seen Velma.
Seen it either, honestly.
Yeah, me either.
I'm intrigued now. I'm actually more intrigued now that it's gotten so much hate on. Because it kind of reminds me what happened to the Flintstones. Like, just people started like complaining about it, and then I think people are like, "Well, actually, that sounds interesting," and that's kind of when it took off. Like, because people heard about it from the initial sort of complainers, and then it found its following.
Yeah. So you write a ton of comics. Do you ever have any hopes of writing something animated or beyond the realm of comics?
Yeah, I've signed a shopping agreement with Atlas Entertainment. They're currently trying to get Second Coming turned into an animated show.
Nice.
Which ideally I would write. But yeah, I'm very open to like writing for like film and animation. I've done some work. I mean, like I said, I've started out writing prose books, and I would like to. I've got like a 200 pages of a novel I've written that I would like to finish at some point. So yeah, I just think of myself as a writer. I don't really think of myself as a comics writer.
Nice.
I try to, I just want the medium to fit the story.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the main reason I asked is because most of the comic book writers that we have consider them, much like you, consider themselves writers, and just kind of comics is where they found their way, but that's not like the end game necessarily.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I don't really have an end game in mind. It's just like the end game for me is always the stories and the things I want to write. And for some, I think they might make better comics than novels or better novels than TV shows. But for me, I just hope to have the freedom to make whatever story it is my mind is working on into the best version of itself possible.
Nice.
I like that. Yeah, it's always like mind-boggling when you have a story idea. Like, should it be a script? Should it be a short story? Should it be a book? Should it be a sketch? It's just like deciding on that has always paralyzed me in a lot of like creative ideas.
And part of it too is just what you have available to you. It's like it's like much different to write a screenplay and then try to get someone to invest $20 million into making it.
Yeah.
Than it is, to write like a comic script and to, get somebody to invest like $20,000 into making it. So I think a lot of it is, you begin to think in terms of storytelling that you feel like you can actually get made. So it's hard. I think it's a harder investment of your time to write a screenplay, not knowing if anybody's going to be interested in buying it, than it is to write a comic that you're fairly confident you can get produced at some point.
Nice.
But I think in a lot of ways, that's what makes comics great, is the fact that because the stakes are lower and you're not like asking for millions of dollars to make it, you can take more chances. You don't have to worry about focus groups looking over your shoulder. You don't have to worry about executives sweating you over wasting their money. You can tell the kinds of stories in comics that, the other in like more expensive medium, you would get the never in a million years response.
That's honestly some of the smartest like advice I've ever heard. Like, no, you're right.
Yeah, I think that's,
I'm out in LA, and when you were saying that, I was like, damn, like it. Yeah, that's
it's sort of like, like if a city's got like a lot of creative people and cheap rent, that's going to be like a city that's going to get a lot of buzz. There are a lot of cool creative things are going to be happening. And I feel like it's the same way with medium. It's like if it's cheap and there's a lot of sort of cool creative people working, doing different sorts of things in it, that's a medium to pay attention to. And I feel like that's kind of where comics is now. It's sort of like, Portland in the 90s or, maybe Detroit now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, comics, it's cool. It's like, I'm trying to think how to word this. Like, as far as the actual comics papers themselves, like no one really buys it that much. Like the people who like comics like us, you know what I mean? Like I can't go talk to a 20-year-old kid necessarily right now who's a big fan of the MCU and be like, "Oh, are you reading Tom King's Human Target?" Like they're gonna be like, "Who?" So I do like that. You know what I mean? Like that's just.
I feel like that's what happens every time someone brings me up a conversation. Like, who?
So yeah, no, I don't know where I was going with that now that I'm high, but I do enjoy the medium, and I feel like there is a niche appreciation for comic books. It's not like a mass loved thing, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like, there's maybe 2 or 3 people in comics who are sort of household names or at least are famous outside the community, and everybody else just sort of like is quietly producing. But I don't mind, being somebody who just sort of quietly produces, because the key to me is that the stories are getting written, they're getting published, and they're available. And as long as the people who I think would love them can find them, that's the important thing to me. And so to me, it's not so much about the floppy sales or, is it going to get adapted to a movie or whatnot? It's more like, is this going to be eventually published as a trade paperback that will find its way into a library, or that will find its way into a Barnes and Noble or something, where somebody who's maybe not a huge comics geek who isn't going into comic book shops will eventually find it. I mean, I love the comic book shops too, and we're very lucky to have to work in an industry where you basically have sommeliers who are recommending your work to people.
Jake's favorite word.
It is my favorite word.
That's incredible. But I also think, to me, it's really important that eventually the comics make it to outside the comic book shop and find people who might really enjoy them, who don't have access to comic book stores.
Nice.
And you have a crazy output, and look, I say this as a fan, but also like I asked Twitter not that long ago, and I have a little following, but like I think it is a better representation. Like I think a lot of people online don't read comics, even though they like to talk about them, so they don't really know what they're talking about in the first place. But I say that not to say that affects this. What I mean to say is this. So I asked everyone, what are some of the best comics in the last 10 years? And your name and Exit Stage Left, The Snagglepuss Chronicles, and The Flintstones kept popping up. And that made me so happy because, yes, you're not a household name. I don't think I don't say that as a diss or anything like that. Like, I know Mark Russell, and I know a lot of people who read comics know your name and appreciate your work. Like, I feel like the comic community, like we're saying, like it's small, it's niche, but within that, I think there's a lot of people that read your stuff. I don't know, maybe the sales, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but
no, I think you're right.
I think your work resonates with a lot of comic book readers.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's sort of like being a famous plumber, but
No,
but I love being part of this community, and I love the fact that like people, like respect me in this community. I think it's okay for me to say that without sounding braggadocious.
Absolutely.
And then I like working within this guild, with like knowing other creators, and it makes me feel like we're part of a movement, which is, I think, important for creative people who work alone, in isolation all day long, every day, to have these experiences where you go to like a convention or something, you realize suddenly you're not alone. You're part of a movement. And there's fans who will come up and talk to you about how much your work has meant to them, and other creators who you've admired, who are also reading your work. It's hard to put in words, like just how, life-giving that is as a writer, to know that the scripts you just sort of hand into the void are actually reaching people and being appreciated.
Nice. Yeah. So that being said, I definitely recommend to any listeners Snagglepuss, Flintstones, and Second Coming. What all do you have? You mentioned coming later this year, the Serial Monsters. What else do you have in the works?
Well, something I'm incredibly proud of that's coming out right now is Traveling to Mars, which is an 11-issue maxi series about the first manned mission to Mars, and it's about the first person they send to Mars is a terminally ill man, because they don't have to worry about bringing him back, and it's really about his thoughts and reflections on how he's wasted his life and all his regrets on Earth. Now that he's suddenly at the end of his life become like sort of the most famous guy on the planet, because he's about to land on Mars for the first time. And I think it might be the best thing I've ever written. I think it probably will, like when people are talking about me in retrospect, will be something they bring up with the Flintstones or Snagglepuss. And issue 4 of that just dropped, and we're going to do 11 of those. Also, we're in the middle of doing My Bad, which is sort of a spoof of comics I'm doing with my friend Bryce Ingman, who's co-writing it, and Peter Krause on the art, Kelly Fitzpatrick on colors. But it's probably the most fun experience I have writing a comic book, just because it's so goofy, and it is like a chance for me to take these pitches which DC told me never in a million years, change the characters a little bit, and finally like they're the premise of the first series that we did is that, and I'd actually pitched this as like a Batman thing when Batman was getting married to Catwoman. I pitched this story where the Joker sends Bruce Wayne like a salad shooter as like a wedding present for Bruce Wayne. But this just messes with Bruce Wayne's mind, because he's like, does this mean that like the Joker knows my secret identity? Because he didn't send it to Batman, he sent it to Bruce Wayne, and so he's trying to go about his life capturing criminals and whatnot, but thinking all the time in the back of his mind about the salad shooter and what it portends. He takes the salad shooter into the Batcave and has it analyzed to see if it's like a bomb or some sort of like surveillance device, and the Batcave's like, no, it's just a salad shooter. So then at the end, he captures the Joker, and he just has to ask him. He's like, how did you know? How did you know to send me the salad shooter? And the Joker replies that like, well, I just figured that whoever Batman was, it was one of Gotham's billionaires. So I just sent a different present to each of Gotham's billionaires, and I didn't know Batman was Bruce Wayne until just now. They were like, never. This will never get made. So
Oh man,
I can just imagine people that just can't take a joke get so mad at that and be like, no, this can't be the way he finds out.
Yeah, it would to be fair, it would really mess up their continuity.
Yeah,
so I can understand why they were doing. But that's fine. And then the second season, I had written a storyline about somebody's like trying to assassinate superheroes, but they are assassinating people with the last name similar to superheroes instead of the actual. But that creates more problems than if they were actually trying to assassinate superheroes. So like they're going, instead of going getting Spider-Man, they end up shooting Mort Spitterman.
I love that.
that's funny shit.
So I know April 4th, you have a Kickstarter that's coming out, right?
Yeah, my first ever book of cartoons called Bunk Bed Mishaps. But April 4th is when I launch.
Nice. So by the time this episode comes out, then it's launched. Awesome. Okay, can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I've been drawing cartoons for decades, but I'm not very good at drawing. I can never draw like my own comic book professionally, but I'm good enough to draw my own cartoons. And they're very unlike my writing in that they're not really about social commentary or, they're not really, they don't tell a story. They're just these weird sort of imagined conversations or scenes from movies that defy any sort of rational explanation. But I love doing them. And I'm a little nervous about releasing them into the world, but I think people, but I believe in them. I think people will enjoy them.
Awesome.
Hell yeah. Well, I'll be supporting that for sure. And I'm sure everyone listening is going to be like, well, I'm on board with that too, because if you don't like Mark Russell comics, you have bad taste in comics. I'll say.
Well, and if you do like my comics, then the rewards will be full of like my own, like if you want to get like rare issues signed by me or trade paperbacks signed by me, going through the Kickstarter and buying this cartoon book will also allow you to get these things as rewards.
Nice.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Very fun. Cool. Who would you cast now in a live, like if you were to cast a live action version of your Flintstones comic?
Ooh.
Oh man, I am the worst at this.
This is a game we play all the time.
Yeah, we're all kind of bad at it.
That's the fun of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I would maybe Patton Oswalt as Fred Flintstone.
Oh,
I
nice. Yeah.
I love Patton Oswalt.
Maybe LP from Run the Jewels as Barney Rubble. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Are you a fan of Run the Jewels?
Oh yeah, I love Run the Jewels.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
they
Barney
rule.
Russell. That's awesome. We love Run the Jewels too. What an obscure reference. I feel like so many people are going to be like, LP from Run the Jewels.
The funny thing is, if you cast him, you would actually like on the credits have to like list him as LP from Run the Jewels.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Nice. Well, shit.
Are there any other, before we wrap, are there any other things you hope you'd like to promote real quick?
Yeah. If you haven't already, Superman Space Age #3 just dropped. So if you haven't got the third one, if you bought the first two, do so. Or if you are waiting for the trade, which is legitimate, contact your local comic book store and pre-order the trade. That's incredibly important for creators to get these pre-orders in, because that determines how many stores will order.
Oh, nice! I didn't know that.
Contact a store and ask them to pre-order your copy of Superman Space Age, the book. Then they'll probably order more, so that somebody who is just wandering into the comic book store for the first time, who doesn't know that might be something like, will have the chance to actually see one on the shelves.
Nice.
Which is, so do it not only because you want the book, but also for the greater good of giving people the opportunity to see something they didn't know they wanted.
Awesome.
I like that.
You got some nuggets of wisdom in there, the way you word things. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
That's what I'm saying. You read Mark Russell, you get some wisdom, you get some comedy. It's so good.
Nice. Fuck yeah.
All right. Well,
Nice.
thank you so much for coming on, Mark. This was a great time.
No, it was a great time.
Awesome.
Sorry, I couldn't join you with the Chronic.
Oh, you're so fine, bud.
It's okay. We don't like peer
we
pressure.
understand. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, as long as people don't judge us, we don't judge people.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we'd love to have you on again anytime in the future. So,
Great.
awesome. Thank you so
very
much, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Weekend.
Take
Have a great
care.
one.
Bye.
Hi, you're listening to Comics and Chronic, and I'm Jake FH.
I'm Cody Cannon.
And I'm Anthony Iannaccio.
And you can tune in every Thursday to hear new episodes of Comics and Chronic.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Comics and Chronic. That's Comics, the letter N, Chronic.
We'll see you guys next week.
Woo.
Peace.